In the vibrant city of Dakari, a 28-year-old entrepreneur named Amahle lived a life many only dreamed of. She had built her success from scratch, rising from nothing with late nights buried in schoolbooks and long hours growing her small hustle into a respected business empire, and now she had it all: wealth, recognition, and a shining office overlooking the buzzing city streets. Yet in the quiet corners of her heart, one thing remained missing: love. Amahle had poured all her energy into her ambition, leaving little room for friendships or romance. And though she often reminded herself how proud she was of her journey, loneliness still crept in like evening mist. One golden afternoon, while Amahle sat in her sunlit office reviewing contracts, her assistant called. "Madame Amahle, your package has arrived. Shall I send the courier up?" "Yes, please," she responded absently, expecting a legal file. She urgently needed, but when the knock came and she looked up, she saw a young man standing at the door, holding the parcel with both hands. "Good afternoon, madam," he greeted, his voice gentle and respectful, and when Amahle told him to place the package on her desk, he did so carefully before handing her a small device for a signature. She noticed his quiet manners, the politeness in his tone, and something else: his eyes, which held a shadow of sadness behind their warmth. "What's your name?" she asked. "Tunde, madam," he replied. "Nice to meet you, Tunde," she said with a smile. "How old are you?" 22, he answered, clearly surprised by her interest. "Just 6 years apart," Amahle noted, silently. "How long have you worked in delivery?" "About a year," Tunde said, hesitant. She could tell he didn't enjoy talking about it, but something about him pulled her curiosity. "Do you enjoy it?" she asked softly. "It's a good job," he replied, eyes lowered. After he left, she found herself thinking about him more than expected. He wasn't just another courier. He was kind, sincere, and carried a quiet dignity. The next day, he returned with another package, and this time she asked him to sit for a moment. "Tunde, where are you from?" she asked. "A small village, madam. I came to the city when I was 18. "Why?" she asked gently. "For a better life," he answered, eyes fixed on his hands. "I finished senior school, but there were no chances back home. I thought the city would offer more, but it's been tough. No one wanted to hire me. I've done many odd jobs just to eat. This delivery work, it's not much, but it's honest." Amahle listened in silence, a deep respect rising in her chest for this young man who had faced hardship with quiet strength. "You've done well, Tunde," she said. "It takes courage to keep going." Tunde smiled, a small, genuine smile that warmed them both. As days passed, his deliveries became more frequent, and with each visit they talked more, sharing little stories, laughing quietly, building something that felt like connection. Amahle found herself looking forward to his knock at the door, and Tunde, too, began to carry her face in his thoughts. One evening, after a long conversation, Amahle realized something unexpected. She was falling for him. His honesty, his youth, the gentle steadiness in his voice, it all tugged at her heart. Tunde, too, had begun to see Amahle differently. Despite her position and power, she was humble, kind, and real, more than anyone he had ever met. "Madame Amahle," he asked one evening, "you've built so much. Do you ever feel lonely?" She looked at him for a long time, then nodded. "Sometimes," she whispered, "but I always believed if I worked hard, good things would come." "I believe that too," he said softly. Before long, what began as friendship turned into something deeper. They began dating quietly, gently, their bond growing despite whispers and side glances about age and status. Amahle didn't care. She had found love, and love, she believed, could weather anything. When Tunde finally proposed, Amahle said yes without hesitation, sure that she wanted to walk life beside him. They were married in a small, heartfelt ceremony surrounded by those who truly mattered. Amahle felt complete in a way she hadn't in years. His lack of wealth didn't matter, for she had enough love to build a home. Some warned her of struggles to come, but she stood firm in her belief. With love and trust, they could face whatever came. And so, Amahle, now 29, and Tunde, now 23, stepped into marriage with hearts full of hope, ready to build not just a life, but a legacy born of sincerity, struggle, and deep affection. Amahle wanted nothing more than to see Tunde succeed and live a life full of joy. She had poured not just love, but unwavering belief into him, and he, deeply grateful for her support, worked tirelessly, never forgetting how her trust had helped lift him. She believed in him so deeply that she used her own savings and influential connections to help him launch his own delivery business. One quiet evening, as they sat curled up on a worn couch in their cozy home, Tunde looked into her eyes and said, "Thank you for believing in me, Amahle." And she squeezed his hand gently, replying, "You have a good heart, Tunde. I know there's greatness in you." With her guidance and encouragement, his company blossomed. From a single bicycle weaving through the streets to a full fleet of delivery trucks crisscrossing the city, and within 5 years, Tunde had become a successful businessman, his name whispered with respect in the logistics world. But as the business grew, so did his pride. One evening, Amahle prepared a special dinner in his honor, cooking his favorite dishes and lighting candles to celebrate how far they'd come. "Tunde, I'm so proud of you," she said, smiling across the table. "Look at what we've built." But he barely touched his food, distracted and distant, his warmth fading into cold silence. Amahle sensed the change, but said nothing, not wanting to shatter the moment. Over the next few weeks, the distance grew, a chasm filled with late nights at the office, unexplained absences, and hollow excuses. He no longer looked at her with the affection he once did. Instead, his words became sharp, his tone impatient. "Is something wrong, Tunde?" she asked gently one night as he reached for his keys again. "I'm just busy," he muttered, not meeting her eyes. Amahle's heart ached as she tried to reach him, to remind him that they had once faced everything side by side, but he had changed, and not for the better. The pain deepened as another silent truth weighed heavily on their home. After 5 years of trying, they had not been able to conceive. Amahle longed to be a mother, and though Tunde had once shared that dream, the disappointment wore them down, leaving their hearts hollow. Then one day, at a business event, Tunde met a vibrant young woman named Zina. Her eyes sparkled with mischief, her laughter carefree, and in her he saw an escape from the heaviness of home. She was everything Amahle wasn't. Young, lively, untouched by responsibility, and soon he was swept into an affair that reignited his ego. Zina flirted boldly, making him feel alive again, and he began lying, covering nights with her under the excuse of meetings and long hours. Amahle noticed the changes, the strange perfume lingering on his clothes, the secretive smiles as he stared at his phone. But the truth hit like a knife when she asked him directly, "Tunde, are you seeing someone else?" And he didn't even try to lie. "Amahle," he said coldly, "you're too old for me now. I need someone who can give me children, someone who makes me feel alive." Her heart shattered, but she pleaded, "We've built a life together, I love you," yet his eyes had turned to stone. What she didn't know was that Zina was now pregnant, and Tunde saw this as his new beginning, a future unburdened by the woman who had once lifted him from the dust. To break free, he devised a cruel plan. One afternoon he sat with Amahle, feigning sincerity. "I've been thinking about expanding the business," he said. "We need more trucks, more hands, but we need capital." Ever supportive, Amahle listened, nodding. "How can I help?" she asked. Tunde laid out documents on the table. "Investors need to see we have assets. If you sign these papers, it will show we're serious." trusting him without hesitation. Amahle signed every page, hoping this would bring them closer again, hoping the man she loved was still in there somewhere. Tunde watched in silence, masking the guilt that clawed at him, knowing he had just stolen from the woman who gave him everything. "Thank you, Amahle," he said, forcing a smile. "This means so much." But she had no idea she had just signed away a large portion of her estate. The documents weren't about expansion, but legal transfers of property and shares into his name. Weeks later, Tunde stood in their home, suitcase in hand. "I'm leaving," he said flatly. "This marriage is over." Amahle blinked in shock. "What? What about everything we built?" she whispered, trembling. "You signed it all over to me," he replied with a smirk. "I have the house, the business, and I'm done." He handed her divorce papers and walked out, leaving her frozen, broken, and stripped of everything. Amahle, the woman who had once built an empire with her bare hands and opened her heart fully, now sat alone in an empty home, surrounded by silence and betrayal. Her dreams lay in ruins, and the love she once held so dearly had turned into the sharpest kind of pain. Amahle was left to gather the shattered remains of her life, her heart a bleeding wound, and her spirit crushed beneath the weight of betrayal. Once a powerful name in Dakari's business world, she was now just another soul wandering the city, unseen, unnoticed, her eyes dimmed and her walk uncertain, as if her purpose had been swallowed by the shadows. Day turned to night, with no real difference, and one evening, lost in thought while crossing a busy street, she didn't see the car racing toward her until it was too late. The screech of tires tore through the air, followed by impact, and the next thing she knew, her world faded into black. When her eyes fluttered open, she found herself in a hospital bed, pain radiating through her body, and beside her sat a man with warm eyes and a familiar gentleness. Tall, neatly dressed, his face lined with worry. "Are you okay?" he asked, softly. "You're in the hospital. I'm Bako. I didn't see you. I'm so sorry." Amahle blinked slowly, trying to place him, her memory foggy and her voice frail. "Thank you for not leaving me," she whispered, and he nodded, relieved. "You're lucky," he said. "The doctor says you'll be all right." Over the days that followed, as she recovered, Amahle came to learn more about Bako. How he was now a billionaire, yet kind and humble, nothing like the men she once knew. He visited daily, bringing fruit and soft-spoken conversation, and his presence soothed her spirit. Then one afternoon, as they sat together watching the rain tap gently on the window, Bako said, "There's something I need to tell you." She turned to him curiously and he continued, "Years ago, when I had nothing, you gave me a job. You won't remember me, but that one chance changed my life. It gave me hope when I had none." Amahle's eyes widened, unsure how to respond, but deeply moved. "I'm glad I could help," she said softly. Bako smiled gently. "Now it's my turn. I heard about your husband. I'm sorry for all you've been through. No one deserves that." Amahle swallowed the lump in her throat. "I don't know where to start again," she admitted. "You won't have to do it alone," Bako said. "Come work with me. You're smart. You changed lives, including mine. Let me help you rebuild yours." Amahle's eyes filled with tears, overwhelmed by the kindness. "Why are you doing this for me?" she asked. "Because once you believed in me, and because I believe in you now," Bako replied. And so, Amahle accepted his offer, and slowly, piece by piece, began to find her footing again. Her new job brought her structure, purpose, and a quiet sense of worth, and Bako, always present, always patient, became her safe place. They shared quiet dinners, stories of their broken pasts, and laughter she hadn't felt in years. She found herself healing gently, steadily. One evening, as they sat at a cafe with the scent of roasted peanuts in the air, Bako took her hand and said, "Amahle, I've fallen in love with you. I know you've been hurt, but I want to give You joy again." Her eyes filled with wonder. "I've fallen for you too, Bako," she whispered. "You've brought me back to life." They embraced, shedding their pasts in that moment and stepping into something new. Not long after, they married in a quiet ceremony, Amahle radiant in a flowing gown and Bako beaming beside her, their vows echoing with promises of love, healing, and forever. Then just when she thought her heart couldn't hold more happiness, Amahle discovered she was pregnant, a miracle she had almost given up on. When their son was born, she held him close, tears streaming as Bako kissed her forehead and whispered, "This is just the beginning. We'll build something beautiful." And though her past had nearly destroyed her, Amahle had risen, stronger, surrounded by love, and ready for whatever life held. Meanwhile, 5 years had passed since Tunde had vanished from her world, and, in that time, he had lived like royalty, using the fortune he stole to buy luxury, cars, clothes, a sleek apartment, and anything that fed his ego. He had married Zina, the younger woman who once made him feel invincible, and believed his life was untouchable, never imagining that the consequences of his betrayal were quietly making their way back to him. Together, Tunde and Zina indulged in the wealth he had stolen from Amahle, living lavishly in the home that once belonged to a woman who had only ever loved him with open hands. But behind the glitter, a storm was brewing. The whispers started small, murmurs in business circles and social gatherings about how Tunde had betrayed the very woman who helped him rise from nothing, and slowly his reputation began to crack. Former associates who once clinked glasses, in his honor now backed away, not wanting to be linked with a man who had so shamelessly bitten the hand that fed him. But Tunde, blinded by arrogance and insulated by his luxuries, ignored the growing silence around him, until the day everything fell apart. Eager to multiply his fortune, he poured the last of his wealth into a bold investment, trusting his charm more than due diligence. But the venture turned out to be a scam, and with one devastating blow, everything was gone. His bank accounts were emptied, his mansion repossessed, and the luxury cars he once flaunted now belonged to debt collectors. Desperate, he turned to Zina, expecting love and loyalty. But when he told her the truth, she erupted in rage. "You mean to tell me we have nothing?" she shouted, eyes blazing. Tunde could barely look at her. "We can start over," he pleaded. "I'll find a way." But Zina laughed coldly. "You think I married you out of love? I married your bank account, and now that it's empty, so am I." As she packed her bags in fury, Tunde tried to stop her, reaching for her hand. "What about our daughter?" he asked, his voice trembling. She turned with a cruel smile. "She's not even yours," she said sharply. "I let you believe that because it was easier." And with that, she walked out, slamming the door behind her, leaving him alone with the echo of betrayal. Standing in the ruins of the life he had once gloried in, Tunde felt the crushing weight of every selfish decision he'd made. He tried finding work, anything to regain some footing, but everywhere he went, doors were closed. "We don't hire men who betray women like Amahle," one employer said bluntly. His name, once praised, was now poison. With no income, he was forced out of the last apartment he could afford, left to wander the very streets he once sped through, in shining cars. Days turned to weeks, and hunger became his constant companion. One evening, cold and empty, he stood outside a bustling restaurant, the scent of grilled fish and pepper stew taunting his empty stomach. Well-dressed guests laughed and dined inside, and just as he turned to leave, a sleek black car pulled up. A driver stepped out and opened the door, and from it emerged a man in a tailored suit, a young boy holding his hand, and a radiant woman with grace in her step. Tunde's breath caught in his throat. It was Amahle. She looked transformed, glowing, peaceful, whole. She laughed gently as her son tugged her hand, and her husband, clearly Bako, placed a loving palm on her back as they entered the restaurant. Tunda turned away, shame burning in his chest. But something made him glance. Back! Through the window he saw Amahle seated at a table, her smile soft, her eyes shining, not with the pain he once caused her, but with joy he could never give. In that moment, regret overwhelmed him like a flood. He had destroyed the one pure thing he ever had. Pride and greed had led him to betray the only woman who truly saw his worth when no one else did. Now he had nothing, no family, no fortune, no future. His name was forgotten, his hands empty, his heart heavy. He spent the rest of his days roaming the streets of Dakari, a ghost of his former self, burdened not just by hunger, but by the weight of his own choices. And every time he saw a family laughing together or a woman holding her child with love, he was reminded of what he had once been offered and what he had so carelessly thrown away. There was no redemption for a man who had buried love beneath ego, only memories and the bitter taste of what could have been.